Hello and welcome to another episode of the Testing Peers. Today we're going to be talking about being, not doing, and we'll explain what that actually means at the beginning of the episode. Today we've got three of the regular hosts of the Testing Peers. We have Chris.
Bonjour.
We have Russell.
I was going to say ça va, but hello.
And we have co-hosts that we have had on before.
Reasonably regular.
A reasonably regular Vernon Richards.
Hello, greetings.
And I'm David. Hi. So we are pleased to be sponsored again by Saffron QA, and Vernon's going to read out the sponsor message.
Saffron QA continue to be our sponsor, and they are also here to support the testing community. Therefore, should any of our listeners be in the market for a new job in testing or hiring new talent for your team, please reach out to Ben. He can be contacted via email at ben@saffronqa.co.uk.
Brilliantly read, Vernon. Thank you very much. And thank you to Saffron QA. As is normal on this podcast, we are going to be having the banter, and today it's going to be Russell.
Thank you, David. The nights are drawing in. Some winter right now when we're recording this. For those who listen to it in summer. Where's your favourite place to be? Because I'm thinking of being somewhere else right now. So, be that coffee shop, holiday, trip. Where would you like to be if you had to choose?
Actually, at this moment in time.
Just in general, what's your favourite place? Like, if you had to choose like one place where you had to exist, would it be, that desert island from 2019 in the Maldives, as an example? Where would you like to be? Is it the coffee shop around the corner, makes you feel snug and warm? Is it that pub with the open fireplace? Where's your comfy place in the ideal world?
So it doesn't have to be related to the fact that it's autumn.
No, autumn has just made me think of it. That's the point.
For me, it's probably Antigua, which is where my dad's family is from. And there is a beach there called Half Moon Bay. And it's the best beach I've ever been to in my entire life. And I haven't been there for 9 years now. So I'm feeling overdue. So that's where I would like to be. I'd like to be in Antigua at Half Moon Bay. And if it wasn't Half Moon Bay, then it would be on my granddad's veranda with a nice cold, fizzy, sugary drink and a book, chilling out.
I'd like to be in two places. There are two places that I feel comfy and safe. One is where we went on holiday, so Skiathos. It's a beautiful Greek island, quite small, but there's very unspoiled areas, really lovely beaches. Yeah, enough sort of vibrancy as well. It was just beautiful there. The second place I'd like to be is, I'm thinking of this in the springtime, but just a secluded small area. So when it's sunny and it's not too windy, so therefore you can feel the warmth, but it not be too cold. So the rest of the world might be cold, might be a bit windy, but finding this sort of secluded area, which is where you're nice and snug and warm, is beautiful, and being outside.
See, I'm not a particularly summery person. I like to be in a nice sort of cozy place where I can look outside and enjoy what nature is doing outside. So I think back, like when my wife says, say we've somehow won the lottery of not having to look after the children for, our own children that we brought into the world. We've managed to get some childcare for a couple of days, and we get to go away together or something. He said, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And one time we stayed in this log cabin, lodge type place, with a view of the mountain in mid Wales. They had a log burning stove. It was very cozy, very comfy, and we spent our days just going for nice walks around sort of reservoirs, mountains, rivers, lakes, those sorts of things. And then in the evenings we just sat and we sort of read books, and it was all very calm. And there was beautiful views, and we were all warm and cozy. I really like those sorts of places.
Very nice.
Just a minute, I asked the question and I'm struggling. Like most people, well, no, it's like there isn't a single place. I think that's the point. I think there's not one place that's more cozy than anything else. There's part of me that kind of remembers sort of sitting with family in a pub with a fire going, in a kind of old-fashioned pub sort of thing, and that was really nice, relaxing, chilled. Part of me just enjoys any old coffee shop, to be quite honest. It gives me caffeine and I feel much better. But I guess there was times where I was just sitting and looking out at the view. So there was a moment, Mantor, I think it was, where I was just in the countryside, walking, sitting on a rock, surveying across the Peak District, and just looking and being. And that's sort of my, I guess, happy place, just with a view of the countryside and people nearby, ideally in a nice day, not baking hot, burning my skin off, or freezing cold, creating icicles, but just a nice, mild, British average meh day. Just looking out at the countryside, any old where will do, just with a view. That's made happy memories of me anyway. Thank you. So thank you for taking me on your journeys as well. So let's move on to being, not doing. Chris, do you want to give us a little bit of a snapshot of what you're thinking about this? Because am I right in saying this is going to be our theme for PeersCon? For anyone who wants to speak, who wants to do workshops or any other creative idea they've got. So what do we mean by being, not doing?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this in many different ways. And based on the theme of your banter just there, it's quite hard to just do your favorite thing without actually being a part of that favorite thing. If that makes sense. Sometimes if you try and do activities without actually being able to actually be a part of it, almost like trying to force things through, it doesn't quite feel right. And then people sometimes say, like, I want to be a human being, not a human doing. And all of those really quite fluffy phrases that don't really mean a lot. So let's try and bring something back into what relates to our world. One of the favorite phrases that I hear is, in order for agility to be a success where you work, you need to be agile. You can't just do agile. You can't choose Jira. Other tools are available, listener. You can't just adopt a way of working without being bought in, without having the actual motivation, the vision, the stuff that sort of buys you in, immerses you in what you're doing. If you haven't got that motivation for what you're doing, if you're not really being those things, are you really going to be successful? Are you really going to be invested? And for this theme, being, not doing, it's talking about being agile, not doing agile, being a tester, not doing testing. There's a separation there. And I think a lot of it's quite broad. It's quite mental in the good way. It's engaging ourselves. It's investing ourselves. It's being a part of these things. I hope that's maybe sparked just a little piece in your brain. I can see Vernon's got a face that maybe he'd like to share with us some thoughts.
We've all got faces.
On my meanderal at the beginning.
I'd forgotten about that little mantra about agile. You've got to be agile. You don't do agile. You be agile. I don't know if it applies to absolutely everything. I understand it in that context, in that situation, for sure. I might have even said it once or twice myself, thinking about it. So yeah, in that context, it makes a lot of sense. But I was trying to think of other roles or activities or things that we come across in our day-to-day professional lives, and does the same thing make sense there? I wasn't sure. Like leadership is one that sprang up. Testing as well is another one. Quality, got to be quality. You don't do quality. It's like, no, I think you do.
Yeah, I thought the being quality, and I'm going to be quality, not do it. But I think the leadership one works though. I'm going to be a leader rather than I'm going to do leading.
I'm going to lead you. Yeah.
If my motivation is to lead people rather than to actually set an example through my actions and what I'm doing, because my motivations are that way inclined. Do you know what I mean?
How would you describe the distinction that little mantra is trying to remind us of, I guess? So being is trying to describe something and doing is trying to describe something. What are those things?
I think if you think, I'm gonna use an analogy because
you do.
Why the hell not? If you think about personal relationships with people, you can do all the activities that could make people friends, but you can't necessarily choose whether you like spending time with that person, whether you like people. Whereas sometimes you can just get that feeling where you're being with people you enjoy, but I don't think you can necessarily force those situations. I think there's a nuance to this. I think sometimes situations can be created which can enable these things, but I think if you think about more of, I'm trying to think about it more in a mental state, and I think I'm struggling to articulate this, but I'm very enthusiastic about it nonetheless. And I think a lot of it comes from what you feel and what sort of motivates you before you do. I think a lot of it's driven about why are you doing these things? What is your motivation for doing these things, and where that comes from?
There's something sort of an intrinsic motivation, that side of things, and the intrinsic behaviors of people versus kind of the actions of people. So what's the actual thing beneath that's motivating you? Agile in particular, leadership. Leading is about showing the way. It's about setting the example. You need lots of skills to do that, and you can learn some of the skills. That doesn't mean you're a leader. That doesn't mean you're showing the way. I could become better at communication. Doesn't mean I'm a leader. And those things. So it's intricate in terms of, like, agile is in, I can follow Scrum. It doesn't mean I'm agile. It means I'm following a process. I can do user stories. It doesn't mean I'm agile. You can do parts and elements of things, but being something is more all-encompassing. It's more, becomes part of your DNA, part of your way of being, your belief systems and so on.
What defines you a little bit as well, maybe?
Yeah, but it's your belief. In my thing, being is your
system.
belief. It's you believe that what you're doing is correct. We all have leaders, and they might not necessarily be doing it in quite the right way. However, they may well be a leader, and the sort of followers or the other people around them may be doing. They may be given tasks, so therefore, it's doing is much more transactional, whereas being is sort of intrinsic and sort of feeling. That's how I see the difference between them.
That probably speaks a little bit towards what I was trying to talk about, relationships. I think sometimes relationships can certainly feel quite transactional.
Yes. Some people are very much, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's kind of where it leads to. And a lot of that comes from if my motivation for doing something is only because I owe you one, or I want to get something back from you, then in that relationship, it's very superficial.
That doesn't mean it's evil. It just means it's not necessarily going to have lasting impact.
This is the long-term success goals. And I think if we speak about testing, being a tester rather than just doing testing, I think sometimes being a tester, you sort of embody, hopefully, curiosity, critical thinking, the desire to improve things, to collaborate, to search for ways to improve things. If you just do testing, perhaps you just follow a process. And I think the same can possibly be where we talk about, and that I've simplified the hell out of that. But if you talk about like agility, again, like you said, you follow the Scrum book to the nth degree. Are you being agile? You might still improve process. It might still be a good thing. It might be what your organization needs. But are you being agile? It's a different thing. And I won't go into people's faiths and things, but I think sometimes people follow things without actually investing themselves into stuff.
Do you think sometimes that being all encompassing, we've thrown lots of examples out there, but it's quite exhausting being all the time? So do you think sometimes doing is a sort of a escape clause, as it were, from the being too busy?
Yeah, I think we, all four of us on this call, and probably everyone who's been on this podcast, will say we're all tired and we'll all feel like we've at times invested ourselves a lot in that which we've been doing in the workplace. And I think you're right. I think if you're all in, there's a lot of toll that can be taken as a part of that. But I do think there's something quite hollow about not being all in and about being sort of mentally checked out. And I think I'd still choose to be the tired man who feels fully invested and wanting to be a part of everything than the man that's just ready to just clock out and I don't care.
That investment's an interesting one because it does tie into belief systems, which are really powerful. And, sort of cognitive behavioral look at it. They're really hard things to change. They take time, effort, and repetition and all sorts of different things. And often one of the struggles, certainly in places I've worked in the past, is where belief systems conflict. So, if you start talking about some of these things, we've obviously got to make sure that we want to make things intrinsic. We want to make things part of who our DNA, but we're still going to make sure we give allowances to ourselves to adapt, to listen, to learn, to see the options, to see the other side, that we don't treat things as complete black and white, Boolean values, 0 or 1, that there actually is a lot of grey between these things. And belief systems need to be evolutionary, need to change, need to adapt. You've got to be open to that. And being, I guess at that point, your being, yourself that is being, has to be open. I've improved. I know I have as a leader. I've improved as a person the last 20 years or whatever it is. And it's all about just trying to make sure that you are open, but also true to yourself. Don't want sort of cognitive dissonance by kind of conflicting between yourself and other entities. So it is really hard that whilst you try and kind of go back to this being thing, that you have an open mind still, that you accept challenge, that you don't say, I'm going to probably offend a lot of people, the earth is round or the earth is flat. There's science that goes behind some of these things. There is opinions, and there is belief systems. I know that if someone has a strong belief system, it's going to be a nightmare to change them, no matter if their belief is, in my view, right or wrong. And we've got to accept the fact that sometimes beliefs aren't rational. So agile, doing testing, doing leadership and all the rest of it, sometimes things aren't rational. They are just beliefs. And they've come from families, they've come from media, they've come from other systems. And you simply by wanting, you can't change beliefs. So I'm just, I guess, a consciousness of that being agile, that being a tester, that being a leader. We all have different understandings of what being those things are. We as peers might have similar ones, but as peers, we'll also come across others that will have very conflicting ones. So we just got to be open-minded to flex a little bit and adapt and learn.
I think it also comes back down to presence, being present and also listening. When you are being, you are present, you are active, you are taking on board everything that's going on. Often when I'm doing a task, you can switch off. You can listen to, you don't have to listen to anything. You can just, it's a bit like the previous podcast where you go into flow work. You don't really need to concentrate on that particular thing. So therefore, in that sort of flow state, I may not necessarily be being because I'm not present in that particular, or as present as I would be. So I think presence is a key thing of being.
I wonder if there's a piece that comes along with these lines. I don't know if you meet people who sort of embody these principles, these things that we're talking about, there's credibility and respect that you sort of associate with those people. And I wonder if there's something that sort of aligns with that. If you just see someone, say, going through the motions versus someone who sort of embodies an enthusiasm. We talked about passion on the podcast before. And I think often when you're really being something, you're like you said, you're sort of fully bought in. I wonder if there's something to that when it comes to sort of credibility as well, because I think very often people can say the right things. They can even sometimes do the right things, but you don't buy into it. Like what I mean?
It's like a salesperson. Often you can have the most charismatic salesperson, but if you don't believe what they're actually offering, then actually they're going to fail in their sale because actually they're not believable. And I think that's part of that as well. Just because you're going through the motions, you have to have that emotional connection to actually believe that it's correct.
How is this distinction going to help you in your day-to-day, Mr. Armstrong? Like, because I know you've been pondering this. What triggered this thought for you? And are there any problems or situations that this is going to help you resolve?
He's got lots of problems.
I got 99 problems. I won't finish.
It's a whole other series of podcasts.
No, I think it comes down to, in my context, I love me a bit of context. When we have a lot of these recurring themes in conversations with clients, with colleagues at conferences, and for me, a lot of them, the ones that come back around for me, and there's two that happen a lot. And one of these ones is this whole concept of anyone can test. And I don't disagree with that. But my point always comes around the motivation, the rationale. The whole point of like, give a man a fish and he can eat. And then you can teach a man to fish and he can eat for life. And it's like, if you gave someone a test case to execute with no context, they just followed some steps. Are they testing? Is that really testing? Is that what they're doing? Or is it this whole lovely testing, checking, la-di-da? But if you actually equip people with like the tools, good heuristics, good models to follow, you sort of help them follow particular mental paths, mental patterns. In regards to testing, like anybody can learn those particular things. You can't necessarily force curiosity and critical thinking, but you can help people have a path towards how you question things, how you look to uncover things, areas you can look out for on particular paths you can take. You can equip people with those things to enable them to actually be a tester more so than just a script following tester in that line. And that's a conversation that I have quite a lot. And the second one is this agile one, because many times people will say to me, we went through an agile transformation.
Sorry.
Yeah. And it wasn't successful. And a lot of that comes again from motivation. Why did they choose an agile transformation? Was it that salesman that said we will optimize and make everything faster? Was it that someone says agile is the buzzword and that's how we're going to do it?
Everyone's doing it, therefore we'll just jump on board.
Was the training, the onboarding stuff, I mean, firstly, did that exist? But also, if it did exist, was that something that actually speaks to what agility is? What the whole concept of being agile is? Because it doesn't actually really tell you how to do anything. It speaks to your whys and your priorities and those sorts of bits if you look in the manifesto. And a lot of folks who have been doing agile, that was me air quoting, listener, many people who've been doing agile for a long time haven't ever looked at the manifesto, the principles. They haven't thought for themselves, okay, here's a bunch of things. It's not my gospel, but have I got those questions? Am I bought in on the motivations, the principles for why we are doing these things? Or have we just taken one way of working and moved it to another way of working? We've moved from using tool X to tool Y, and we're just doing it because that's the way we're doing it. Or am I invested in? Do I understand why I'm doing these things? Has there been that sort of mental shift into these things? Am I bought in? Are we bought in, crucially, in the world of agile? Have we got the right people, the right mentality? Have we been empowered as teams to be able to do those things? And if those questions haven't asked, probably you're not even really doing agile. You're just kind of kidding yourself. But very often those are the conversations that I end up having with people, because I'm a fully bought in agilist, but there isn't any one way that I would ever suggest people do stuff, because they need to understand why and how that applies to their context, their people, their tools, their constraints, and then how they apply themselves in that scenario could look totally different to anywhere else, but they can still be agile regardless of what they are doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was going to ask, in fact, you've sort of half answered the question as to how, as leaders, can we help people to be, agile or be whatever, rather than just doing it. And I think you've sort of half or have answered it.
The one really super cheesy thing that I came up with when I used to have to make sort of promotional videos for my employer previous was I was talking about bringing about change in your organization. And I said, it needs to stop being your change. You remove the why and it becomes our change. Those things only are successful when you involve the folks who are actually a part of that change. It's not something you can force onto people typically to then be successful. You need to involve the right people, get the right people bought in, have that motivation and stuff going forward, and then that change can come forward. It's not really a transformation, it's an evolution.
It's actually the good example of being a leader is it's all very well coming up with an idea, but actually it's the first follower that makes you a leader. And therefore the first follower can then be a leader in their own right, because actually they've already bought into that particular idea or thing. That's the key thing, exactly as you say, is having people who have bought into the idea and can then help drive that particular forward.
And not just bought into your idea.
No, exactly.
I was also going to say, the one thing to be careful of, there are a lot of leaders, because they're hierarchical above people, believe that because someone said, oh yeah, that's good, it means there is such a thing called sunflower management, where people look up to the people and follow it blindly. So just be careful of who your followers are and think about it. Just because you're getting people listening could sometimes be because of power structure versus actually thing. And it's hard to tell because of the influence structures that we have. It's very hard to tell. But if things snowball without you getting too involved, that's a good sign that it's actually got the kind of the impact, the influence, the ideas working. If you're having to force people's hands, then it suggests you're doing that because of your role, your title, versus any intrinsic value to people. Going back to sort of being, not doing a little bit. So the doing is actions, isn't it? That's what doing generally means. It's an action, it's a take. So it's following a process, it's executing a test, it's an activity generally. And being, it means it's kind of like, as we said in the earlier, it's in your DNA, it's the way you are. I guess what we're trying to say is, how do people, I guess, transition from, because often skills are learned by doing activities. You change, your styles change, you learn things, you see how it works, and that intrinsic value, like agile, you can read the manifesto. That doesn't instantaneously, that's doing, it's reading, doesn't mean you're going to be agile from it. So how do you, I guess, any tips, advice on, is it just practice? Is it time? Is it just the way in which we try and demonstrate things to people? How do you take activities to convert them into your essence? That's a profound question.
There's a thing that this wise man called David Maynard once suggested when he was talking about how he views testing, and he said he views a lot of testing around experiments. And I think a lot of this comes down to core beliefs of start small, try something. What did you learn? What can we do to improve it? How can we iterate and run through those things? I think in Scrum they have the 3 pillars of empiricism, right? It's inspect, adapt, transparency. And that's a great way to adopt things. Don't fear things not working out first time. In fact, probably question if they work out first time. Give it a go. Like, you think you've understood something, try it. What happens? That's what our developers do all the damn time when they're creating code. They either put it together, they compile. Does it work? Who knows? Let's give it a go. And I think that's a really, really nice way to approach things.
So thank you, Chris, for quoting me. Actually, here's the other thing I was going to say was for this is that, to get out of that doing cycle is to perhaps challenge, see something that can be improved and try it and challenge it. And, there are a couple of things there. It's far easier to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So perhaps you don't, depending on what it is, but also it's allowing yourself to take risks. Allow yourself to make mistakes. You learn much more from mistakes. I mean, I've been in demonstrations for tools, and the salesperson again comes in and goes, look at this fantastic tool, and they've got their patter down to a T. They show you the task, they show you the tool, and it all works perfectly in their scenario. And as soon as you get it onto your system, it all goes to shit, and it doesn't quite work. You don't know the tool quite so much. You're pressing the wrong buttons. You get yourself in the right mess, and you lose sight of it. So challenge yourself in order to take risks and see how it goes, and to get yourself out of that doing. And then by being present and making those challenges, then you can start being much more independent, basically.
I think, since we're bigging up David, I think it's something that David said earlier. I think the very first step is helping people see what's in it for them. Because a lot of the time people are doing things, they exist in the system and they're doing things, and this might be a Jerry Weinberg thing, but the process is working for somebody in that system, and all the rewards and everything, the environment is kind of optimized for that existing system. So it takes a lot of energy. I think someone mentioned this before. It will take a lot of energy for you to change that system. And I think, and this is based on the influencer model by Joseph Grenny et al. So they wrote one of my favorite books, Crucial Conversations. And they have this influencer model for change. There are 6 different aspects to it. There's personal, social, and structural, and then there's motivation and ability. And the first one is personal motivation. And it's literally what's in it for me. I don't really see the point of changing to quote unquote agile. It's working for me. The reward structures are just absolutely brilliant. I've built my whole career up to this point in this particular context. I mean, we're talking about agile, but it could be absolutely anything, right?
Exploratory testing.
Yeah, the easiest thing to get people to do is take the actions. But if you want people to embody the new paradigm or whatever, they're going to have to, this also came before, that they have to choose to take that on. So yeah, I think the way that you influence people is to speak to, okay, here's what's in it for you. Maybe they don't even see because it's not even maybe. Odds are, it's pretty much guaranteed they're not going to see things the way you see them. You're coming from a different perspective. So you're like saying, I can see all these problems that no one else is, the person you're talking to is not going to be aware of. So trying to get them to see that is the key. And that's a really good book about that, actually. I definitely recommend that. I quite enjoy that book. So it's got a whole bunch of different ways and strategies you can use to influence people. But I think that first step is helping people understand what's in it for them.
Link it back to them.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we've talked a little bit about not doing. It's almost accidentally. But I think one of the key things is that you have to do to learn, to grow from it. So don't be afraid of doing things, but just look into kind of what, the why, what's in it for you, what's in it for others, as you said, Vernon, there. Because doing is part of it. It has to be, that's how we learn, that's how we achieve, that's how outcomes are kind of often delivered. So don't be afraid of doing to a degree. This is not, again, it's not Boolean, it's not true or false. It's just kind of, I guess, our view is being is a much more zen place to be, I guess, and that makes sense. It's a better place to kind of achieve the outcomes and more intrinsically achieve things, and it'll drive more successes. It'll make more people around you see successes and those sorts of things. So it's a good place to get to. It should be your outcome, but it can take years to be something.
Yeah.
Build on that, actually. Is it a problem if people don't want to embody whatever it is we're talking about?
Hell no.
No, everyone can be in their own space.
Everyone's unique.
Yeah. People might just be like, you know what, I'm just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I don't mind.
Different people have different ways.
Maybe this role is not there. That's not where they're choosing to spend their energy to embody something. Maybe they embody something else. And well, I'm just here to get paid. So you tell me what you want to do, and I will do that thing. I've got no objection.
You can always step back.
I would argue then they're not be great leaders, but you don't have to be embodying it constantly. No. You can be a good leader still. But, I buy in, and many people buy into the people that embody things, but not everyone does. Some people do, as you say, for certain tasks, certain roles, need task management, need to be told what to do. That's a more productive model in some cases. Not all, but some. So it does vary, certainly. But in a thoughts world, and where everyone's a sort of thought worker, I do think kind of the more embodiment leadership is more effective currently. That's the model that seems to drive the better outcomes. But there's always different theories, different models of approaches, and we'll learn, and it'll change, and it'll evolve, and we'll be doing something different in 20 years' time with TikTok or something, so management style.
I guess what I'm thinking is part of getting people to move from one to the other. Well, we're actually talking about from doing to being. This is turning into the David show. Someone talked about, was it David that said the first follower is the most important thing?
Mm-hmm.
So that was.
If you're trying to elicit some kind of change, you need to find out who the people who are the most amenable to changing in the first place, and kind of focus your energy with those people instead of the other people who are just and this is not to throw shade at these people, it's just they're not as amenable to changing. So you want to find out where is my first follower actually? Who out of this sea of people is going to follow me onto the dance floor, start rocking out? It's just going to be the two of us.
I'll follow you, Vernon. I'll follow you.
But you only find that you only find that stuff out through engaging with people.
Yeah, you're damn right. Yeah, man.
And this is my closing thought, listener. Everything's about a balance. We can't all have everyone who is the same as yourself. In fact, can you imagine a team full of just yourself?
It would be hell.
Culture ad, not culture fit.
It would. Culture ad, not culture fit. This is the David Maynard show.
Culture copy.
We really need that balance of people. And then we have different motivators, but we still need this whole goal of getting on the same page. The team that works together wins together. Understanding our place, understanding our why. Not all of us have to identify our why, but we need to understand and appreciate why we're doing these things. And for those of us who are motivated by continuous improvement, by wanting to challenge and change things, there isn't any one given way to do it. But to embody these things, for us to talk about them, for us to experiment and chat about these things, this is how we learn in the open, and this is important. Doing isn't a bad thing, but let's question: are we being these things? Is this helping us to achieve these things? What's my motivation? Why are we doing these things? So Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Vernon, for joining us. The reasonably regular Vernon now. Thank you again to Russell and David. Thank you to Saffron QA for sponsoring us. Keep your eyes open for more information on Peers Con March 14th, people. That's right, you heard it here first.
2024, just for those who listen years later.
Or maybe we'll do it March 14th every year, Russell. Who knows? Probably not a good idea. But we thank you. If you want to give us any feedback, we will very much welcome it. You can find us on most of the socials. We're on Blue Sky, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, formerly known as Twitter. We are on testingpeers.com. You can email us if you still do that thing at contact@testingpeers.com. Thank you very much. Please reach out. Please tell your friends. Please like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, we do that sometimes. Find us on patreon.com/testingpeers. All of the testing peers. We love you very much. Thank you for listening to us.
For now, it's goodbye from the testing peers.
Goodbye.